So for the IELTS writing task, there are two tasks, okay? When you're going to take up IELTS writing, especially, since all the three of you in attendance tonight are taking up the general module, you're spared, on the fairer side when it comes to writing task one, because this is going to be a letter composition. If you are somebody who seems to send letters, not letters, excuse me, emails on a frequent basis, if your job requires you to send emails every day, probably like two or three, this is not going to be a difficult task. The only thing that you will need to add on will be some vocabulary. Apart from that, you need to be careful of your grammar, your punctuation, and spellings. It doesn't matter if you will be taking up the computer delivered exam or if you're going to take a paper-based exam, you still have to be careful with your spellings and also with your punctuations. Unlike our smartphones where you have autocorrect, you have predictive text, and it'll help you to find if your spellings are incorrect. When you go into a writing task, you do not have that privilege. Okay, everything is on your own. If you're going to write it on paper, then it's you and your paper by yourself. Even if you're going to take a computer delivered exam, then also it's just a blank screen and yourself. Okay, so it's everything that is in your power, everything that you need to look after, and everything that you have to proofread. Now, a few things that you have to take note regarding your writing task one is that it will be for 20 minutes out of 1 hour. So you have to spend about 20 minutes in task one, and the remaining 40 minutes will be spent on your task two. You are required to write either a formal or an informal letter. We'll be taking a look at both formal as well as informal letters and what are some of the major distinctions. Apart from this, you need to have at least 4 paragraphs, at least. Okay, so that means you can write 5 paragraphs, you can write more than that, but the minimum count here is going to be 4 paragraphs. And within these 4 paragraphs, you need to compose about 150 to 170 words. So these words, it depends, your subjects, your nouns, your verbs, proper compositions, and so on. All of it needs to be wrapped up in a pretty bundle of about 150 to 170 words. And you can also surpass 170 words. That is not going to be a problem. However, you need to make sure that you stay within the 200 word limit because number one, you only have to spend 20 minutes on this. And secondly, you really wouldn't have enough time if you're going to write 200 words to cross-check what you have written. Okay, so it's very important. Stay within the 150 to 170 word range. This will, apart from, not having enough time and having the tendency to lose track of what you are saying, there is a higher chance that you will go off topic if you're going to write more than 200 words. Okay, so stick to the 150 to 170 range, but not less than 150. You need to be careful. It says at least 150. It means even if you're going to end up composing 149 words, which is just one word less of your word limit, you will be deducted. Okay, your points will be deducted there. Okay, so be very careful of that. I'll also let you know how to calculate if you have accomplished 150 words, if you're going to, take a paper-based exam, or if you're going to take a computer-delivered exam. So we'll take a look about that in a few minutes. So whenever you are tasked with writing a letter, you need to make sure that you are familiar with the question in itself. So here you can see we have a sample question that was asked about 3 years ago. This was back in 2020. Now, this question is a sample of what you will get, what you should expect for a writing task 1. The question here asks you to write a letter to Mr. Walker. Now, before you find out who is Mr. Walker, you need to first concentrate and focus on the first line that's given there. So it says, you are a current student of the Lauren Bresk University, studying business administration. You want to apply for the post of quality assurance manager. You have recently seen on the university's notice board. So this is the scenario. Okay, this is the agenda. This is what you should be writing about. Once you have an idea of who you are, so from this, you know that you are a student, you know where you're studying, and we also know what you are studying. And through the letter, we also find out what post you will be applying for. Okay, so these are your crucial info. Once you have all this crucial information, take a look at what you should exactly be including in your letter. So first it says, give the reason for your writing. That's the first thing you need to include. Second, you're going to tell about your education. Since you're studying in Lauren Bresk University, you're pursuing business ad, try to mention what is it that you specifically study. Finally, you're also going to describe your work experience, and you have to describe why you would be suitable for the job. Okay, so we have 3 bullet points, which connotates to 3 paragraphs. Okay, each bullet point you are going to describe and discuss in a separate paragraph, because this will help to maintain the conciseness as well as the structure of your letter. Okay, so we have bullet point 1, 2, and 3, and accordingly, you will write about it. Now, when we write a letter traditionally, we have the letterhead, we have the receiver's address, the sender's address, the subject line, date, and so on. But when you sit down to write task 1 general, you really don't have to include all of those. What you really need to include will be just for, your introduction. So let's take note of the structure here. Structure of your letter will be as follows. First, you need to have your salutation. Then we are going to have your body paragraphs, your closing statement, and then of course your complimentary close. So when we're talking about the salutation, we're talking about dear sir, madam, if it's a formal letter. And if it's an informal letter, you can address the other person with their first name or whatever name that's been given. In this scenario, you can address this person as dear Mr. Walker. And once you have addressed them, you can further proceed into your body paragraphs, where you will be talking about the 3 bullet points that are given. When we come to the closing statement, we are specifically mentioning, the line that we often include in our letters, looking forward to hearing from you, or looking forward to a positive response. This one-liner is your closing statement. It indicates to the reader, or it indicates to the person to whom you have addressed the letter, that is the end of everything that you have mentioned. Okay, so that will be your closing statement. Depending upon the letter type and the intention of the letter, we will also switch up the closing statement a bit. I'll give you some samples towards the end. And then finally, our complimentary close. This is, before we sign off with our name, we include best regards, sincerely, yours truly, and so on. So you can stick to sincerely for formal letters. And if it's going to be an informal letter, then you can end it up with yours truly. There are quite a few that you can use, but for now, we will stick to these two so that it'll be easier for you to understand as we progress forward with the explanation. Okay, so this is the sample, okay, and also the structure that is appreciated when you will write a letter. Now, what is the grading scheme, or what is the marking criteria for your writing task? So let's take a look at what is the marking scheme. What is it that they look for in your writing task? The first thing that they look for in your writing task is task achievement. So when we talk about task achievement, we are talking about, we're going to talk about whether the person has answered the question correctly. For example, if we are required to compose a letter where you have to draft an application for a vacant position, have you composed the letter on that particular idea or not, is what task achievement will base its judgment upon. Okay, let's say that it's an application letter, but you did not draft up an application letter. In fact, you have perhaps drafted a complaint letter. Then it doesn't really serve the purpose that it was required to. In that criteria, task achievement will be brought down. Apart from answering the question, the second thing that task achievement looks for is your word limit. Okay, have you accomplished writing 150 words, or are you under the word limit? That will also be counted in your task achievement. Now, there is an easy hack for the people who, are going to do the paper-based examination. Of course, it isn't efficient. It isn't logical for you to sit down and count every single word that you have written on that paper, because that's going to take up a lot of your time which you can be spending on your task too. So what is it that can help you to justify that you have perhaps written 150 words already? It's simple. On an average, per line, people tend to write 10 words, okay? Especially with the type of ruling paper that you will be given there during your examination. It is expected that people write 10 words per line. Now that you have 150 words, let's say 160 words to be on the safe zone. 150 words is what you need to write. We're just going to divide 160 by 10 words per line, which leaves us with 16 lines. Okay, so if you have filled up at least 16 lines throughout your letter, then you can safely say that you have accomplished about 160 words. There are chances where, in some lines, certain words are too long, so it's going to take up a lot of space. So since that can be a possibility, we add up about, let's say 4 lines. So that should be about 20 lines that you